the monolithic versus microservices architecture we discussed in yesterday's session. So when it comes to microservices is going to take a lot of infrastructure. So indirectly, so whenever it is taking a lot of infrastructure in the sense, it will involve a lot of cost also. So when comparing with the monolithic application, but when it comes to flexibility or customization or isolation or the resiliency, all these points point of view, stability, performance, maintenance of the applications or maybe enhancement of the applications will become very much flexible with respect to microservices architecture, because we are making every functionality as a individual component or individual service. We are not making tightly together, bundled all the logic of all the functionalities like monolithic in microservices. In microservices, what we are doing, we are segregating the requirements. Based on the requirement, we are creating a individual service for that functionality, and then we are making communication with another services instead of we are combining the logic as part of single project and everything. So here these kind of use cases what we discussed yesterday, we can scale up. Scale up means starting, or maybe you can call it as bringing up. Scale up means bringing up. So as part of the microservices architecture, whatever the functionalities we are having with respect to more number of requests or responses, that means the network traffic. So those services we can automatically, we have a capability, or we can do the auto scale up by writing some extra functionality, only that specific microservices or only that specific functionality where it is involving the microservice. But if it is monolithic, if you want to do the scale up, auto scale up, or if you want to do the scale up based on the network traffic or based on the network usage, then what will happen? Can we do scale up or not? We can do that. But only thing is you are targeting for the product module, but it is scaling up all other modules also. It is scaling up all other modules. Unnecessary modules are coming into the picture. Okay, I don't want user module 100 instances or 10 instances. I want only 2 modules. But if it is monolithic and you plan for product as 10 instances, then how many instances are coming with respect to users also? 10, right? Because we combined with together the project as a single war file or single jar file, right? So that is what the problem here it is. So these are all advantages we discussed yesterday very well. And after that, we are planning to, we just started taking examples or maybe understanding the Spring microservices architecture. Okay. So I have uploaded Spring framework PDF and as well as microservices PDF. I have uploaded both in the Google Drive. Just verify once. Okay. So here we discussed yesterday a couple of points, and we will discuss a couple of other points today also. Yeah. If you see here, whenever it comes to the microservices architecture, we will always, this is all comes under the microservices architecture. This is all comes under the backend application. This is all comes under the backend application with respect to our Java Spring Boot microservices project. So these are all coming under the front-end applications, or we can call it as client applications, because a request always comes from the front-end applications only, or there is a chance of getting requests from other backend applications. There is a chance, not there is a chance, we can get it also, right? Python to Java, Java to Python. We can make the REST services or not. Yes, .NET, Java, all these things. So like that. So that means any kind of client. Finally, these are all clients. So client connecting to the backend application. So whenever client connecting to the backend application, what is the first contact? Where it will reach first as per this architecture? API gateway. So what is API gateway? Okay, what we are going to do as part of the gateway, we will try to understand. But before that, what are the things we know from this architecture? So in this entire architecture, what we know already? Is this the point or not? You don't know how to create Spring Boot applications? We know, right? So we know how to create Spring Boot application. Now, these things are coming as calling as microservices. Service 1, Service 2, Service 3, Service 4, Service 5. Like that, these are all coming under the microservices. How many microservices we can maintain? We can maintain any number of microservices. Okay. Now, these are all things we know how to implement. At least we know how to implement a Spring Boot application, right? We know how to implement a Spring Web application, Spring Boot web application. So these are all coming under the section of microservices. Now, somehow we have to make sure as part of microservices architecture, we have to make sure the communication between one microservice to another microservice. That means one Spring Boot application to another Spring Boot application. So what we know the functionality as of now? REST template, right? REST template is the functionality we know how to call the REST services. But there are some drawbacks available with respect to REST template when we are dealing with the microservices architecture and when we are calling internal services. What are now we will see later. So, but somehow we are going to enable the communication in between one microservice to another microservice. We have to do that. So, first thing is we have to understand API gateway, what it is. And after that, do I need to explain you how to create Spring Boot web application? Do I need to explain again how to create REST services? How to call REST services? What is consumer, what is producer and all? You know already or not? See, this training is completed, guys. This is what completed from last 4 months. How to write on a Spring Boot application, right? So this is all completed. So we have to understand how simply we are making the communication between one microservice to another microservice when instead of using REST template. That we will understand as part of microservices training. Okay, so now my plan also, first we will write down 3 Spring Boot applications. So that means how many microservices? 3 microservices. And we will try to implement the architecture, microservices architecture with respect to API gateway, with respect to config server, all these components or all these, okay, components or functionalities, what we can see here. We will implement all these things, okay, as per microservices architecture are impacted on or, okay, together we are just making sure these are all components working with these microservices. So whatever we are doing with respect to these 3 applications are similar to when you are having 10 microservices also, 10 or 15, 20, whatever it is. So one by one, we have to understand what is the importance of gateway, what is the importance of gateway, what exactly we will implement as part of the gateway, what is the functionality, what is the nature of the gateway we will understand, and config server, and then service registry, all these things. So what we will do first, we will implement 1, 2, 3 REST services. Okay, you can feel it as 10, 15 also. And then we will start understanding the API gateway. Then you can understand easily with existing Spring Boot applications what we are doing with the gateway. If I discuss initially itself gateway, you cannot understand anything. So let me create a Spring Boot individual 3 Spring Boot web applications and then identify the problem. What are the problems when we are dealing with individual microservices and how API gateway is providing solution to those problems. Then easily we can understand the importance of API gateway component as part of this microservices architecture. So for that, what we did yesterday is what we are trying to do here it is. Okay, I'll get this as this. So I'm creating 3 microservices. Give me a second, just microservices. Can I reuse the existing project? But I will show you what is available here. So you know this, right? Whenever we created a Spring Boot application, a main method will be created, and here you will have everything. I will explain you guys. Nothing. We already know everything. So I don't want to waste our time on known things. Okay, so see here now. Let me try once. Is it started or not? Simple. I just written a simple web application. What we know already. I'll just try to showcase you. Okay, everything is good. So here, if you see here, I written a controller, and inside controller, I simply written a REST service, user relation point of view, user registration, user. So similarly, I can write down all my REST services, user login, add address, all the details, all the REST services you can add. I'm not adding much, many REST services. If you want, you can add 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 also as part of your project. So you know how to do that and everything. Even if you want, I can write down one more, but not many. So user login. Okay. So as part of this, we will get always email ID and password. Assume we are just planning for email ID and password. So first of all, you are clear with this one, registration. We are not doing anything. We are getting data from the client. We are passing to the service layer, and from the service layer, we are setting to the repository, entity object, and from that entity, we are passing to the repository via JPA framework, and then data will be inserted. It's a very straightforward scenario. Fine. So you know how to write down entity classes. You know everything here. Okay. So I'm just writing one more REST service quickly. So what I will do, user credentials. Okay. So let me create a class for this. So these are the two properties we want, and these are the Lombok constructors I'm taking. Okay, here I need to change it as email ID. Okay, fine. Now let's create one more method inside the service class. So what is the logic I have to write down? Tell me here. You. What is the logic I have to write down here now? Find by email, password. So before that, what we have to do? That method is available inside the repository by default. It's a user defined or predefined? User defined. So we have to define that method inside the repository, right? Yes, that's all. That is what. Good. So here, user repository dot find by, based on the entity class, you have to define that email and as well as password, right? So go to the find by email. You should be capital letter and or operator. And operator or operator. And operator, right? And password. Okay. And what is the important thing you have to remember here? The order of the values. Can I give here dot get password? You can give, but what will happen? The password value will go to the email level. Select a star from users where email equal to password and password equal to email. Values will be exchanged. So that's why we have to be careful. So user credentials dot get email. Okay, so this method is not available inside the repository, so you're getting that error. So now I added here so that I'll get always user details object in case if it is available. Okay. Okay, so fine. So I just created two REST services. Now imagine you can create with path variables, query parameters, like the regular story what we learned as part of last 3-4 months. So you can implement couple of REST services, path variables and everything. It's an individual micro service. Now we are considering Spring Boot application as a, now we are considering the same Spring Boot applications what we implemented from long back. Now today we are considering it as a microservice. Now today we are considering it as a microservice. We are calling it as a microservice because we are following an architecture of microservices architecture to create the project. So that's right. Now the same Spring Boot application we are calling it as this Spring Boot application microservice. Now for example, if I have a requirement, okay, if I have a requirement of dealing with the products or orders or something like that, can I write down order controller here? Now I have a requirement like add orders, create orders, delete orders, cancel orders, all these kind of requirements I have. So I have to write down the REST services. Can I add a controller class here? Can we add a controller class here? Then it is becoming monolithic. If you are combining all the functionalities together in single web application, then it is you're just against of the, or you're not following the guidelines of microservices. Microservices architecture is clearly saying, make sure a functionality as an individual service. Okay, you should not mix multiple functionalities as part of one microservice level. Like user versus order. Is there any relationship? I mean, functionality point of view. User versus order. Are we having any relationship with the user versus order with respect to logic implementation? Adding user, login user, delete user, this is a different functionality, all related to the customers. Orders is all about the products, making the orders, canceling the order, payment status. This is a different functionality. As part of my entire project, this is a different functionality like that. So you should not add in the sense you should not, okay, violate the microservices guidelines. That's all. So when you are feeling like the functionality is completely different from the existing microservices, then what you have to do? You have to create a new microservice. You have to create a new microservice. Okay, let me test first of all, is it working or not very quickly. Okay, so is it clear everything? Name, email, password, contact, city, gender, and we given respective values. We created the request payload. Okay, so send the request. User created successfully. So that means it's a simple regular functionality, guys. I'm not discussing too much. We are not entered into microservices concept. So it is inserted into table called as Flipkart underscore users. Table is already there. That's why it is inserted. Or if you want to create a fresh table, let me make it as create. So how many instances started? 3 instances we started for the microservice of user manually, right? So on 8001, 8002, 8003. So can I send request on 8003? The request will be executed or not? Yes. Sorry? Oh, okay. So user created successfully. So if you given any other details also, though, can I send request on 8002 now? Yes, we can do that. So user created successfully. So total 2 users are created on our table called as Flipkart underscore users. So is it clear now until this? Anything you know? I mean, anything we have here, something like new? No, right? Everything, whatever we know, REST services creation we did as a simple Spring Boot application. Fine. Let me create similarly 2 more REST services called as payment, orders. We decided like order, payments, right? I'll make sure. Okay, let me do one thing. I'll figure out what we are doing. So we are taking 3 microservices. One is user, second one is orders, and based on that payments, something like that. You can involve, guys. You can involve products, orders, payments, delivery, returns, whatever Flipkart functionalities you know, whenever you are using. So try to add everything as an individual functionality point of. And you have to be familiar with database tables architecture also, making relationship between database tables. Okay, three microservices we will implement. First one is clear. Okay, let me create one more called as orders, new project. Okay, so I just created order service. Let me add the required properties here also. The database properties. So here, yesterday we discussed about this property. This property will be called as part of microservices architecture. This value will be called as microservice ID. Microservice ID. So it has to be unique. Why? You will get to know that where it is involving this ID and all. We will see slowly. Okay. For time being, I'm giving this to 8005. So what is the user hyphen service I given port number 8001, comma, and I started on 8002 as well as 8003, right? So now order service, we are just taking by right now as part of the properties file by default 8005. Okay, fine. So later we will see what we can do for the payment service. Okay, here I'll give like payment. Sorry, order. So here, what is the context path we given, guys? Slash user. Here, slash order. Okay. Order or orders, whatever you can give, we can give, no problem. I can give this one also, but I'll make sure here none. Okay, fine. So anything else we have to discuss in this properties? Everything we know, right? So these are all very common things. Only thing is we added a new property called as spring.application.name, and it is considering as a microservices ID, and this is the most important property as part of the microservices architecture. We will see. Okay, fine. Next, we have to write down a couple of REST services. When you are working for the microservices architecture, now what you are understanding, you are going to completely work on REST API implementation only. Calling REST services, creating REST services. This is the work only you will get always. Okay, so what I will do here also, I will reuse the code. I don't want to waste the time, what we know already. So I'm just taking order service here also. Source, main. So I'm just renaming packages now. Okay, so see here, you can add Swagger to every microservice. Swagger dependency so that you can see all the REST services under that microservice in the Swagger API documentation. Okay, so here I did not create many. That's what I'm trying to say. You can add something like updating the profile details based on your skills. Okay, whatever we learned as part of the REST API implementations. Update the product details, delete the product details. Okay, list or load the products or load the order details. Sorry, load orders, cancel order, make a column is cancelled, true or false in the database level. So like that, cancel order, update order info, delete order, load orders based on the user ID, cancel order, payment status of an order. You just create all the REST services. I'm not writing much. So here, what is the REST service one we created? Order / create. So that means what we are trying to do, we are creating an order with order ID and maybe order name, order email, who is ordered by that, who is the person, who is the contact, and what is the order amount for that. Like that, I just added the couple of details here. But you can add the as much as possible. See, it's very simple, guys. Just go to the Flipkart and open one of the existing order what you made. There you will see a couple of details: price, transaction ID, so and so date, right? Whenever you order that, try to take those things as a database columns. So then you will get almost 15 to 20 database columns. That is what the reality, real time. Okay, so here, creating order, just passing to the DB, and inside DB also we are inserting the data. So let me start this application now. Okay, table created, application started. Let me create a REST service here also. So here we have one thing, order ID, the email name, email we already have, contact also we have. So here I will pass order ID, order 1, 2, 3, 4. Name we have, email we have, contact we have, amount. I'll add amount. You can add number of products, all these columns. Yes, I have total 6. No, 5. Order ID, name, email, contact. Password not required. Okay, so let me try now. So order created successfully. So if you see in the console logs, so record is inserted into DB or not, right? So yes, we are ready with second service also. Okay, let me create third one also. So that means in real-time projects, assume your project is started from the scratch. I mean, that means earlier there is no project, you just started freshly the project. So we are going to create like this microservices first, or we are going to make sure first involving the microservices components like API gateway, config server, all these things. Which one we will take first? Definitely the API gateway, all these things we will configure first, because those are all things like one-time work. But these REST services, creating REST services, creating all 40, 50 microservices is an endless process. It is continuous process for next 1 or 2 years like that. But first we will work on the API gateway and everything. When we know everything, we can start from anywhere else. End to, okay, last to first, middle to last, middle to first. You can start from anywhere else. You can make the plugging, you can make the connectivity between the microservices and as well as microservices architecture components. But why we are going this approach here, it is first what we know that we will discuss. Then we will identify the problems with pure microservices without adding the microservices component. What are the challenges we are having? Now, how those challenges are rectified by the microservices components, what given by the Spring framework like API gateway and as well as config server, as well as service registry, all these things. So once you are good or familiar with microservices architecture, next time when you are practicing also, now first time you don't need to create microservices blindly. You can create first an API gateway and a config server and a service registry, and then once everything is good, then you can start creating the microservices. It's up to our. Okay, here I'll create payment hyphen service. Okay, here I'm giving something like 8010, and here I'll give payment. By default, I given 8010. Okay. So please learn how to copy paste also. Sometimes it will save a lot of time to you in real time projects also. Requirement will be this much big. But when it comes to the coding time, sometimes we will assume like it will take 1 week or 7 days or 8 days, something like that. But by the time already one more microservice is available, okay, almost same kind of functionality with almost lot of data. I mean, the DTO properties are same, 70 to 80 percentage. Our entity class properties are same. Almost logic is also same. Then what we can do? Are you going to write down DTO class separately? No. Go to that REST service. I mean, go to that microservice. Copy those DTO classes into your microservice where you are doing that, so that you can save a lot of time. So you will have code based access for every microservice when you are working. They will give access for every microservice. When you are having 40 microservices, you will have access, source code access for all 40 microservices. But you will work on, maybe as a ownership point of view, you will work on 3 to 4 microservices or 10, 7 to 8 microservices like that. So just know the things, how to make the copy paste shortcuts in Eclipse, all these things. Okay, if you see here in the payment controller, I have written something like net banking, registration, net banking, login, and banking options. What are the banking options they are providing? Okay, they are supporting credit card, debit card, net banking, and UPI payments. Like that, I just given a information here. What are the banking options they are supporting? And I written one thing for the net banking registration. So whenever we are doing the net banking registration, we have to give a unique user ID, his customer name, his password, and his available balance, something like that. I just taken only couple of properties. So I added 2-3 REST services as part of the payment controller. As part of the payment controller or payment microservice. So in the same microservice, can we add one more controller class? Is that like only one controller class we can add? No, it's not like that. It's a Spring Boot application. When you are seeing individually, it is a Spring Boot application. You can add any number of controller classes, any number of services, any number of DTOs, entities. Based on your requirement, you can add new controllers. You can create new REST services under this microservice like that. Okay, fine. So okay, so this is all clear. Okay, so let me start payment also once, and we will see. Okay, it is started on 8010 and as well as payment. Let me create one more REST service. Test it. So what is that REST service? After context path / net banking / registration. So registration means we are just inserting data into DB. Logging means we are just verifying with that username password the data is available or not in the net banking point of view. Net banking login success, net banking login failed when user is not available. So like that. So you just enhance your REST services. Net banking registration, and what are the details we want? Here it is. User ID. We need a name, password, available balance. Okay. I'll make this as user ID. Name I'll keep as it is. And I'll make password. So here, available balance. Yeah, I'll keep this one. Net banking user registration. Success. Try to log in. No. Now, in case if you want duplicate, I will try login also. Okay, what are the details we want? User ID and password. So here, I'll keep user ID password as it is. Net banking login success in case if you given wrong password. Net banking login failed. You can send a DTO object. It will have all the details, something like that. Okay. So similarly, we can test user login also if you want. Fine, but this is not all our concept. So whatever, now my point here it is, whatever we implemented 3 Spring Boot applications as of now, whatever the REST services we written 2 REST services as part of every microservice, the things what we are done right now or until now, anything we know, I mean anything we don't know, anything. If you have anything, let me know. We will discuss so that I can move to the now. What are the drawbacks available in this individual microservices? How we are going to achieve these problems with the microservices architecture and all. I'll start with respect to microservices now. We are entering into the actual microservices now. I mean, how to manage all these. So all these microservices as a single application, or what are the challenges we are having? We are trying to understanding now. So these 3 microservices, you guys are clear now. So 3 Spring Boot applications, we are calling it as a 3 microservices. So like that, you can add few other REST services, microservices also. Delivery service, return service, customer care service, something like that. You can do all those things. Okay. So now the first point, what we will discuss here it is, if you see here, here. For example, user service is running on how many port numbers? 3 port numbers, right? Fine. Can I make sure similarly order also? Duplicate config, go here, edit config. So here I am starting one more. What we have to call it as? That is fine. One more instance. We have to call it as an instance. Server.port, for example, I'm giving 8006. Okay. And close. Oh, sorry. Apply, close. And then I'm just starting now. If I selected here and if I'm starting, how many instances will be started now? 5, 6, 8005, 6. Total 2 instances related to order. Okay, fine. Now let me similarly, can I do for the payment also? Yes. Duplicate config. Yeah, this is the duplicate one. Open config. So here, if you want, you can give name also. Second instance, third instance, something like that. Server.port equal to 8011. Okay, so now just concentrate here. The problem you have to understand first. Even online people, if you are having any doubts, let me know. No problem. Just type your question. I'll take it up. Okay. So if you see here, the configuration of microservices, 8010, 8011, as of now we did. Now, for example, is this the permanent, okay, number of instances we are going to maintain as part of the microservices architecture? Like user service is always only 3 instances, or order service is always only 2 instances, and payment is always only 1 instance, like that? No, right? That is not the agenda of microservices. The first thing, the most important thing of microservices architecture itself, you can scale up instances as many as what you want, and number of instances based on your load. You can increase, you can decrease, you can. So tomorrow I can add by, okay, another 5 instances or not? Yes, I can do that, right? Fine. Similarly here also I can do few other instances. I can add few other instances, right? And after some point of time, I can remove some of the instances. Remove means stopping simply. For example, now here user microservice is starting on how many instances now? 3 instances. Can I stop 1? Or do I need to stop all? Can we stop 1 by 1? For example, I want 2 only out of these 3. What I have to do? Stop 1. That's all. Select 1, expand it. You will see 3, right? For example, if you see here order, 2 instances available. Select one of the configuration, click on the stop button. Then how many order instances started now? Only 1 right now. We stopped 1 because we don't need it. After some point of time, we want second instance. So select it and start it. Now again order available on 2 instances. That means you can scale up the instances based on your demand, whether it is less or high. You can increase, you can decrease the number of instances available up and running. Okay, fine. Now the next point is, we know why we are making n number of instances available. Why? To handle the traffic, to handle the network traffic easily of the incoming request with related to user, payment, order, all these things. Oh, fine. But the problem here it is, now for example, if you added 5 more instances, how many port numbers will be you have to identify? Can I give? Okay, let me do one thing. I'll take 1 more payment instance, duplicate config, third one. Okay, so let me edit it. Open config. So I'm just making 8002. Is it going to work? Why? Yes. So I given 8002. Let me start it. Let me try to start it. What it was trying to say. What it is? 8002 port is already in use. So that means now the third payment service instance is started. No. What is the problem here? It is say port number problem, right? You given already occupied port number to the payment service. That's why it is saying already in use. So that means what is the challenge you observed here now? The number of port numbers when you are increasing the instances. See, when you are having 3 microservices and whenever you are making 5 instances, you are using lot of port numbers. And tomorrow if you are having 50 to 60 microservices and 50 into 5, 250 port numbers. Assume 1 microservice running on 5 instances by default. So 250 port numbers. So now in this case, the challenging part is what? Managing the port numbers. How will you manage? How will you remember which port number belongs to which microservice? So, okay, fine. Let's remove the 50 microservices. Let's take the use case what we taken as of now. So now in this case, okay, let me delete this one, the second payment one. Okay, so as of now, user 3, order 2, payment 2. These are all running, right? Now, for example, you are given your backend microservices, you are asking to the front end team, integrate these REST services as a single web application point of view. Now you have to share REST services with the front end team or not? Whose responsibility it is? You have to give all the details to the front end. Like you can call these REST services from your front end so that if it is user registration form, if it is submit, call the Okay, for example, assume front-end team working on a form called as user registration. In their front-end technologies point of view. Okay, so you know how front-end form looks like, right? User registration, first name, last name, or whatever you will say like. If you go here, yeah, I can take from here easily. Okay. Now, you are saying like user registration should contain 6 fields. One is name, email, password, contact, city, and gender value. So now front-end team displayed name, email, contact, password, city, gender as a radio button or male or female, something like that. Now once they will define a submit button, right? They will define a submit button. Now once a submit button clicked by entering all the details, it has to reach to our REST service app, right? Fine. But now in this case, what you will tell to the front-end team as a backend developer, are you going to say like, send your request always on this dedicated port numbers? Definitely, if you see here, where it is. So in the front-end level, they should know the port number or not. 100% they should know the front-end port number. But here, in the user registration, user microservice point of view, how many port numbers you maintain? 3. Tomorrow, is it only 3? You may increase 5, 10, 15 instances also. That means now, but at the same time, front-end developers can integrate only one port number. So that means what's happening here, it is simple. Just understand with common sense now. Assume user running on 8001, 8002, 8003, etc. Right? Now a request coming from the front end. At the front end level, you told him send a request on 8001 or 8002 or 8003, okay, etc. Like that, you given the port numbers. But as a front end team level, they cannot handle all those things with respect to multiple port numbers. They can do only one thing, is like this. What is this? Port number. They are calling user registration. And they given how many port numbers? Only one. So that means assume now front-end developers written the logic like 8001/user/registration in his front-end logic like level like this. Okay. Now tell me in this case, the request will always reach us to where? Now the request coming from the front end is always reaching to? Always reaching to the 8001. Always reaching to the 8001 because here clearly you mentioned as 8001. So that way request is always reaching to the 8001 instance. Then what about the 8002, 8003, 8004? Why? How the request has to be routed to the other instances? I maintained 4 counters to make students are coming, lot of students are coming, or a lot of people are coming for an event. I made 1 counter. I felt like so many people came, so a long line is there. Then generally what we will do? We will add 1 more counter. And still people are coming, we will add 1 more counter. In our regular life, we will do right. Now still you added 4 counters. 4 counters you maintain, but at the main entrance level, main gate level, you are telling to the everyone, go to the only counter number 1. You maintain 4 counters, but at the main gate level, you are saying like, go to the counter 1 for everyone by default. Now all the people are coming and joining into the counter number 1. Then what about the remaining counter 3? Remaining 3 counters. So you arrange everything, but you are not utilizing, you are not occupying. The reason is at the entry point level, what is the instruction given to the person? Go to the counter number 1. Now similarly, from the front end point of view, if you are telling, you cannot tell them like these many number of port numbers. I am running on 10 port numbers so that you can send a request. Manage yourself from front end. Dynamically, sometimes it should be 8001, sometimes it might be 8002 or something like that. Can you tell to the front end developer? No, you cannot say that. Front end developers will say, I don't know all these things. Give me a single standard URL. I will send the request. After that, your headache, what you will do? Internally like that. So that is the biggest challenge. Now, these are all instances are running. These are all instances are running, but really requests are reaching to these microservices now, these instances. I'm talking about only user microservice point of view. Only one use case, user microservice. Now these instances are becoming useless. And this is the purpose we created microservices architecture. And this is the purpose we started these instances unnecessarily staying ideally, sitting silently. No, right? We have to utilize when a request coming, sometimes it has to go to the 8001 and sometimes request should go to the 8002 dynamically, 8003, 8004, something like that. Now we have to distribute the incoming request to all the available instances or not, right? Like the counters, why we are arranging the counters? To make sure people are distributed with respect to 4 counters, so the things will become, the things will complete it very quickly, right? That is the purpose. You will add 4 counters, 4 persons, so that 4 people divided, then you can complete the work very quickly, so that your performance will become more, right? So that is the purpose. But now how will you do that? But in microservices, the concept here it is, we have to make sure n number of instances. Then how will you avoid all these port numbers? And at the same time, in the back end, can we run, number of instances on only one port number? Is it possible again? Number of instances on only one port number, can I run? So that front end team, I can give only one port number, 8001, can I run 3 instances on 8001 itself? No, right? So that is what the problem with respect to port numbers management, when you are maintaining the n number of instances, when you are giving to the client. So if it is today 3 microservices, you are having 7 port numbers. And if you add a couple of other instances, it will become 10, 15, 20. And if you are having 40 microservices, 50 microservices, and every microservice is running minimum on 5 instances, then it will become hundreds of port numbers. So it's a very difficult process, how to deal with, how to manage it, and all, right? So there are different techniques available in a high level microservices level. So to make sure port numbers point of view, but don't go too much level. So now see here, I will give you a technique. Same fundamental we can take. Now at the main entrance level, so the information passed, like so many people are coming. That's why here we added 3 more counters. First we added only 1 counter. After that we added 3 more counters. Now at the main gate level, when people are coming, now you are telling to them at the main gate itself, you are maintaining, you are making a statistics, and you are saying like first 10 people or first person coming. You are telling like go to the count number 1. Second person came, go to the count number 2. Third person came, go to the counter number 3. Fourth person came, go to the counter number 4. Now fifth person came, go to the counter number 1. 6, counter number 2. Like that, if you are making things, what will happen now? You are doing the what? Load balancing or not. And you are you are utilizing all the instances or not. Right? And at the same time, are you giving confusion to the person who came to you? The person who came, are you giving confusion to him? No, right? Very clear information, right? So similarly, now, in this case, we are maintaining a component called as, what it is? Gateway. That's why I take an example. Okay, so here, if you take in here, okay, I think I already opened image. Okay. So now see here, this is what we are trying to discuss now. Now these are all clients requests, front end or back end, whatever it is. Now as per our general example, these are all persons we taken like that. Now this is the main gate. Now here I am telling like, okay, go to instance number 1, go to instance number 2, go to instance number 3 of same microservice level. Similarly, applicable for other microservices also or not. So now payment is also running on 2 instances. A request reaches to the gateway for the payment point of view. Okay, now gateway will decide the request has to go to which port number, something like that. So now what is the point you have to understand here it is? Yeah, here. These are all instances related to user. Similarly, you do have payment, order, delivery, like all other microservices or not. Assume 5 instances of order. So something like payment, 6 instances. Delivery, notifications, 6 instances. Okay, notifications, 4 instances. Now, like this, you in the back end, you maintain so many microservices with a many number of instances. Every microservice is running on only one instance? No, on number of instances. And we have n number of microservices with n number of instances. So then how will you manage the incoming request is all about the concept of, somehow we are using a concept, one of the component called as API gateway. So generally it will be called as API gateway. So simple, what it will do is, now you will make a common port number, something like this. What you did, I created a API gateway application and I given a port number called as 888888. Okay, fine. Now what I will do in the API gateway level, here it is, first step point of view, I will tell to the API gateway, hey gateway, okay, whenever, now see here what I will do, here it is. These are all what? Client. So that means whether it is a front end, whether it is any other programming language applications, whatever it is. So that's why generically I can call it as a client. Now what we will do is, as part of the gateway, we will make some routing configuration. We will make some configuration, here it is. As part of the, we will create a application, separate application, calling it as a API gateway. And as part of API gateway, what we will do is, we will do the routing configuration. Okay, we will see very clearly tomorrow also. We will just close only theory point of view today. Routing configuration. And we will tell to the API gateway, hey gateway, user microservice, base path, context path is what? /user or not? With respect to user service, what is the context path? /user. Similarly, order. Similarly, payment. Right? Now, what you will tell to the payment gateway is, what we will do is, as a backend developer point of view, we will give all these context paths information or configure inside the gateway, like user is running on 8001, 8002, 8003. Similarly, order running on 8005, 8006. Similarly, payment running on 8010, 8011. Okay, like this, you given the information. Like this, you given all the information inside the gateway. Now you are telling to the API gateway, hey gateway, I will do one thing. Now this gateway is running on which port number, guys? Assume as a 8888 port number. Now what I will do, what I will tell to the front end team is, send a request, localhost, host name is, whether it is a local host or any remote host, whatever it is. Port number is 8888/user/registration. Like that, I told to the front end team now. Send a request with payload and send request for the /user and /registration with the port number called as 8888. So what I told to the front end team now, our client team, send a request on which port number? 8888, and the URI is all about /user/registration. Now what will happen in this case is, see here, now front end team return logic, okay, like this in the submit button level. Yeah, in the submit button level, now they return localhost 8888/user/registration, like that. Now the request will reach us to the first where, guys? 8888 port number. So that means the request reaches to the gateway now. Okay, I will take tomorrow. Do we have it to take care about synchronization? Why synchronization came into the picture? Okay, so see here now, front end team sending a request by adding URL like this. And now the request first reaches to where? Gateway or not? Because we are going to create one gateway application tomorrow. It is also similar to Spring Boot application only. We will see that. Simply consider it as a web application. API gateway is a web application. Now request reaches to 8888 API gateway application level. But in the API gateway level, what you configured, what you given information to the API gateway level, you given all this information. Now somehow we will see everything tomorrow, guys. Here, this will make some important role. This context path. So what is the context path? /user. Now immediately API gateway. Okay, now immediately once the request I don't know. Okay, I will do one thing. Oh, here I have. I'll forget how to do that. Okay, so see here, I want. Okay, once the request reaches to the API gateway will verifies the routing configuration. What is the information we configured inside the gateway application level, it will verify. And what it will identify now with respect to slash user point of view, how many port numbers available? 3 port numbers available. Now gateway will decide the request should be goes to the either 8001 or 8002, 8003 by applying a concept called as load balancing. What is load balancing? I'll tell you tomorrow, and I will show you practically also whether it is really okay applying dynamic routing with respect to a number of instances or not. For example, the first request is now routed to the 8001, and now the logic is executed on which instance? The REST service logic, sending data, service layer, repository layer, inserting into DB, and response also created on 8001 instance, and it will reach to the gateway, and gateway will give response back to the front end. Now, for example, from another computer or maybe another client sent a request for the same localhost 8888/user/registration. Now the request again reaches to the gateway because 8888. Now context path is again user. Now this time it will identify how many instances available? 3 instances. So by the time assume 8001 is already dealing with couple of requests, because in real time per second how many requests we will get? Flipkart, Instagram, all these things, millions of requests, right? So that means assume by the time 8001 is already occupied with so many requests, it is already dealing with the so many requests. For example, 50% is occupied. Then it will identify 8002 is a little bit free. So let me route this request to 8002 instance. Now the logic execution happens on the 8002 instance, and response will be created, and it will come back to the gateway, and gateway will give that response back to the respective client. Now one more client sent request for the user. By the time assume 8001, 8002 also busy this time. Somewhat this is also dealing with couple of incoming requests. Now the request will be routed to 8003. Like that, internally gateway is making selection of instance by applying a concept called as load balancing. So it will apply by default some load balancing technique. What is load balancing and all, we will see it practically tomorrow, and I will explain one more time. Don't worry, we are out of the time. But simple. Now you got the point. How we are managing. Now assume tomorrow user running on 10 port numbers. Is it anyway impacting to the client people, client logic? You added 100, 200 port numbers. Is it really impacting to the client logic? No, right? Somehow you are making everything set up in your backend application system itself. Now one more person sent a request for the slash payment slash net banking slash registration. Then it reaches to the gateway. Okay, again 8888/payment, like this, the request will come. Now it reaches to the gateway. Gateway will verify payment is running on 2 instances. Then out of 2 instances, which instance has to be request routed? How it will identify? By applying a load balancing technique, it will identify which instance is having less resource utilization. That means less traffic, less number of requests out of 2. Then it identified so and so 8011 is having less load. Then the request will be routed to 8011 instance by the gateway. Like that, gateway is making an important role in every microservices architecture. So that's why gateway is the most important component. Most of the microservices architecture are every microservices architecture will maintain gateway application as part of microservices architecture 100%. Not only that, there are other things also we are going to implement in the API gateway. Now, guess 40 microservices are there, and you have to protect all your REST services. How to protect REST services? By using some JWT auth to all this. For example, assume JWT. Now in 40 microservices, you are going to write down the JWT logic, token creation, token validation. Are you going to write down JWT logic, whatever we return, security filter chains, all these things in 40, 50 microservices now? No, right? So where you can write down now? Guess API gateway. So that means across microservices, whatever the common things you have to carry out, like security logics, filters, all these things, those logic also you can implement as part of the gateway level. So we will discuss other functionalities of gateway tomorrow. and not probably, tomorrow we will create gateway application, how to create a gateway application, what are the steps, and I will show you, okay, slowly step by step, how to do this configuration in the gateway. And some point of time, even we are going to remove this port number dependency also in the config. Okay, we will do that step by step. Next, so don't miss the classes next 10 days. Because, okay, so it is having a relationship between gateway to config server, sorry, not config server, especially gateway to service registry. We will do some automation. I mean, there is a relationship. So that for that you need to understand service registry of microservices framework or microservices architecture. So that's why don't mix next 1 week class.